Hey guys, Static here with another PvP build for the Horns of the Reach patch. This is a dual-wield Magicka Warden build that puts out absolutely disgusting damage. This is the Extinction build. This is a build that will work in pretty much every scenario. There's never a time when massive damage isn't useful. There are, however, times you may want to change a couple things depending on your opposition or your playstyle. As always, I encourage you to change the setup for what works best for you. I'm just sharing what I had the most success with. This is primarily a dual-wield and destro setup for maximum damage, but if you want to have more survivability and sustain, I've had success running Resto Backbar and taking advantage of Healing Ward, Mutagen, and Resto Ultimate. Both setups work fine, I just prefer the Carnage. We're a High Elf for this build as it offers the most damage and sustain, but a Breton or a Dark Elf would be fine as well. Just make sure your choice has passives pertaining to Magicka. Let's take a look at the stats. We have a very nice Magicka pool at around 50k in the CP environment, which will help us push a lot of damage. You can still push this much higher if you choose to run different glyphs on your gear than I do, but I'll explain my decision making when we cover the gear. Our HP is right where we want it at around 18k, which would put us around 23k with Battle Spirit. We do run a shield on this build, but we don't keep it up full time, so having the extra HP is necessary. We achieve this with everything into Magicka due to our glyph choices as well, which also is reflected in our stamina pool, which is sitting at over 14k, which is very healthy for a Magicka setup. Recovery can vary depending on your food. I typically run Witchmother's Potent Brew to take advantage of the sustain while gaining some Magicka. But there are times when I feel like going full damage, usually in BGs, where I choose to run Bi-Stat food with no recovery because typically once you run out of Magicka with this build, you're going to die anyways. So why not go in on a killing spree, either run and regen in a safe location or just go kamikaze and respawn with full resources. Stamina recovery is decent too, which helps to ensure that we can dodge and break free when we need to, providing I don't use it all sprinting around because I'm used to playing on a stam tune, that is. Our stam pool and recovery are also useful with being a stage 4 vampire. We go vamp for the extra recovery as well as Undeath and Darkstalker passives. Darkstalker in conjunction with Bird of Prey makes you very mobile while in stealth, as Bird of Prey gives us major expedition and major endurance if we look here, increasing our stamina recovery by an extra 20%. And it does not bring us out of stealth. So you pretty much can move as fast as a Magicka Nightblade while in stealth. And as long as you have your Legerdemain ranked up to at least rank 16, you can take advantage of the 40% reduced cost of sneak. So you can pretty much go stealth all day as long as you want and don't have to worry about it. Just stop for a second and regen your stand back up and keep going. Our spell damage is nice at 3100, but with an infused Berserker enchantment on the back bar, which we can keep at pretty much 100% uptime, we're looking at 3650 spell damage. That's a lot when paired with our huge Magicka pool. Crit is decent as well at 42%, so we crit a lot and the crits are very large, even on targets wearing Impen. The only people that your crits will be somewhat mitigated will be targets stacking Impen traits along with Impregnable set, and those are very far and few between. Our penetration is very high at almost 14k as well. The main reason our attacks hurt so much. Everyone feels this damage, trust me. For light armor, our resists are not bad. When buffed up, we're mitigating 26% spell and 23% physical damage, and our crit resists are decent at 28% reduction to critical damage. If you have someone running Transmutation setting group, you have more than enough crit resist to mitigate quite a bit of most people's crit damage. I run the Apprentice Mundus Stone as it provides the most damage output while also buffing our healing as well. You can swap this out for the Lover for similar damage, but it's kind of overkill on a lot of people and it won't benefit your healing. The Mage is nice because it synergizes well with our setup and helps both damage and shielding. If you like to go for maximum sustain, go for the Atronach. I really encourage adjusting your Mundus for your needs. I typically run immovable pots when I can afford to do so. Go for the ones with health and Magicka to help counter when you take burst damage. I also like to keep around immovable pots plus detection handy for those pesky Nightblades. You can also run tripots here as they help in any situation. I just like the knockdown immunity in immovable pots. Now let's move on to the gear. This setup is pretty straightforward, nothing special about the theory crafting here, it just works. This is a 5-1-1 setup to boost our stats as much as possible, particularly for the extra HP that we would otherwise be lacking. The first set here is Necropotence. It's a staple for light armor Magicka Wardens as it procs off our Netch, which only needs to be slotted on one bar. It would be working against us to not run this. Full spell damage on the enchants because fuck sustain. And I'm missing a touch of Max Magicka here because I'm waiting for the golden to bring the gold Necro rings, but oh well. You can run any monster set you wish with this setup. When I want tankiness, I'll slot a VMA Resto back bar along with Mutagen, which gives us some good sustain, even more when it gets buffed next patch, along with Pirate Skeleton for a lot of major protection uptime. Engine Guardian would be great for sustain. Grothdar provides good damage when being engaged by melee enemies, but not Slime Crawl. We already have access to Minor Berserk. For me, I found that there's no monster set that provides more for me than what I currently run. I have one heavy Dama House paired with one medium Kina. Now, this gives me max Magicka and stamina and a spell damage boost. In my eyes, nothing else compares. We run Tri-Stats and Impen on everything. You could probably get away with just running the prismatics on your large pieces, the helm, chest, and legs, but I find that if you go with them on all of your pieces, you end up with the stats that I'm happiest with. 23 max HP with Battle Spirit in a CP environment, pushed to 25k with minor toughness through some Warden passives, around 50k Magicka, and close to 15k stamina. It's perfect. Our last set is what pushes our damage that much further. Spinners. Ideally, you would go with dual wheel spinner swords here, as you won't be needing your 5-piece penetration on our back buff bar. And these swords are not cheap, guys, so either grind your eyes out of your skull in Malabal Tor farming for them, or get ready to pay upwards of $250,000 gold per sword. Expensive, but totally worth it. I rarely swing my swords at anyone, but when I do, it's usually only once. So we can enchant the swords with the same glyph on both weapons to ensure that we get the most burst as possible with the frost enchant, because we have damage modifiers in our passives as a warden to frost damage, as well as possibly applying chilled status effect, which places minor maim on the target, decreasing their damage done by 15%. It's really about the damage though. It doesn't matter that they share a cooldown because I won't be swinging them a second time anyways. Once again, you can choose fire or shock glyphs here instead in hopes to proc the burning status effect, which applies a dot, or concussion, which triggers minor vulnerability, increases their damage taken by 8%. I believe all three of these status effects last around 4 seconds. The reason we go dual wield is specifically for the last passive in the dual wield skill line, which gives us a nice flat damage boost of 5%. This is the only thing in the dual wield skill line that we're after. Back bar is spinners as well, just to maintain the 4-piece spell damage buff to help our healing on this bar. We won't be needing offense on this bar, so we don't need a sharpen trait, and we don't need the 5-piece spinners. Go infused here. You can cheaply get this unique infused lightning staff, and it works perfectly for our application. Infused berserker enchantment means that every 5 seconds we can reapply this buff. So with practice, a single light attack on the back bar gives us a monstrous spell damage boost that's up almost 100% of the time. The added bonus of this being a lightning staff gives it a slight chance to proc the concussion while refreshing your enchantment and applying that minor vulnerability for the 8% increased damage taken on the target. You can go Destro in place of dual wield, which works good as well. A flame Destro front bar with a resto back bar performs great. You will lose one of your monster set pieces but gain some juicy Destro passives like the 8% increased single target damage with flame stabs, and you can run crushing shock or force pulse. You also gain the ability to light weave in between skills, which not only improves sustain but reliably procs a shock enchantment, which can trigger concussion, which once again applies the minor vulnerability. I still find it's less damage than dual wield, but still totally viable choice. Next patch, with a perfect asylum weapon, this could be interesting, though you would lose all of your monster sets at that point. The point is, you have options here. Now on to the skills. Skills are a very important part as to why we push the damage we do. On our front bar, everything here is to enhance our damage as much as possible. Animal companion abilities all increase our damage done by 2% each. So we're pushing 8% increased damage right off the bat. Paired with the 5% through dual wield and minor berserk for another 8%. That's 21% increase to flat damage at all times. Concussion happens to proc on the back bar, 29% increased damage on your target. Along with this increase in damage done, we also have a 15% increase to our max magicka on this bar. Savage. Growing Swarm is our first skill, and when fully buffed pushes to over a 30k dot, which ticks very hard. You can go with Fetch or Infection here, and it hits a single target even 50% harder on the second cast, but I find fighting multiple enemies, I like to apply this on a target, run my full burst combo on them, and if I kill that target, this huge dot is immediately placed on 6 targets that were around that enemy. This helps to pressure the groups when your group is pushing into them. If you were running Destro on the front bar rather than the dual wield, you would drop this ability for Crushing Shock or Force Pulse. Screaming Cliff Racer is our spammable. You know it, you hate it, you can't fucking dodge it, and its tooltip is over 15k fully buffed. It does take time to hit, which is its only drawback. A lot of the way this build function is delayed burst. You don't have that immediate twitch result of burst. It's calculated, which works fine when paired with my terrible internet connection. Deep Fissure is the bread and butter of our build. You can have this go off every 3 seconds. It's over a 20k tooltip fully buffed, and it CCs the closest target. Your regular combo is simple. Shulks, bird, bird. Shulks, bird, bird. It's easy and it's a ton of damage. Now my favorite skill in the Warden's Toolkit, the Bird of Prey. The drawback of a lot of Magicka classes is their poor mobility. We don't have that problem. Movement speed, stam recovery, 10% increased damage done with minor berserk, and 2% for being an animal companion ability, all in one skill. It's only a 10-second uptime, but it's enough because we front bar it. Next we have Inner Light, which gives us our Major Prophecy 10% crit buff, along with 5% max magicka, plus another 2% for being a Mage's Guild ability. We have Northern Storm. This is our ultimate. We try not and cast this offensively. It's mainly here for the 8% max magicka. There are times, however, in group play that this is a nice choice to activate. Your group is getting Destro ult bombed, boom. Any ally within your storm takes 30% less damage. I use it more defensively than offensively. Back bar is interesting. This is a Destro bar for one reason: Elemental Drain. With our already high penetration, this skill rips armor from even the tankiest of opponents, pushing our penetration through the stratosphere. The added bonus of minor magicka steal gives us an equivalent of 600 magicka recovery while damaging that target, which is a lot. This is, however, our flex spot for when we want to run a resto back bar. I usually will throw mutagen here with a VMA resto for the regen and the burst heal if knocked under 20% HP. It also removes a status effect, so it's a nice option. Ice Fortress is a must-have in my eyes. We don't have our shield up most of the time, so I like having access to our major resistance buffs. This skill makes us actually decently tanky for light armor. Minor protection is the key here. Not only does this reduce incoming damage by 8% at all times, this applies to your shields. Yes, even your shields take 8% less damage. The bonus effect of this skill is great for Nightblades in your group who normally don't have a way to pre-buff their resistances. Only after casting a shadow ability will they gain their resistances. So this is great to cast in groups prior to engagement to ensure that your party is as tanky as possible at all times. Blue Betty is 100% necessary. This gives us magicka back, not much really, but it's something, as well as our major sorcery buff. And it procs our Necropotent set. Did I mention it's free to cast? It also removes one negative effect. This has, however, been bugged for a long time and won't remove any effects if more than one effect is on you, which is always. However, this is finally being fixed for next patch, so Wardens rejoice. Our shield of choice is Dampen Magic. You can choose to run Harness here, but I find that I would rather have a larger shield at all times against all targets than just gaining some magicka back against only spellcasting characters. Not to mention the fact that you're normally spamming your shield, so you don't get a chance to gain the full 3 magicka returns from Harness. So go with Dampen. Our last regular ability is Living Trellis. Some people like Leeching Vines, I don't. When I'm on this bar, I'm turtling. I'm not attacking the target, so I won't be benefiting from placing minor lifesteal on that target. Living Trellis Morph not only heals you each time you're hit, even behind your shields, but you can recast it for a burst heal. This burst heal is close to the same as Enchanted Growth, will continue to heal you while you're recasting shields and buffs per hit, and it's half the cost. You can play around with Budding Seeds here as well, but it's super buggy unfortunately. Healing Seed and both its morphs offer the largest heal in our toolkit, but they're clunky and unreliable. Living Trellis won't let you down. It will reliably proc those much needed green balance passives. Our last skill here is our Big Daddy Damage Dealer Ultimate. Ice Comet gives us a huge burst of damage and a crazy long dot on the ground that honestly you find people standing in because they don't know any better. When backbarring a Resto Staff, I'll either slot Trees here or Light's Champion, and then lose the 8% max Magicka from Northern Storm on the front bar and replace it with Meteor, which still gives us 2% max Magicka. I've even had success front barring Dawnbreaker of Smiting for an immediate CC burst damage. But when I want full potato damage, I backbar Meteor. Why? Because you can light attack on your back bar to proc your infused Berserker enchantment, cast your Meteor, swap to the front bar, and when it hits, it gains the damage modifiers from all of your flat increased damage percentages and the max Magicka modifiers. Fully buffed, this tooltip is a 30k Meteor with a nasty dot on the ground afterwards. It's absolutely brutal. Let's quickly look through our CP here. Nothing in this tree. We want to go heavily into Master at Arms. Pretty much all of our damage is upfront burst damage, so you want to go heavy into there. We want 13% increased magic damage at all times. We want 20% on our crits because we have decent crit rate. You want to add to our penetration, stack into that decently. 13% reduced dodge roll. 14% Magicka recovery, 12% stam recovery. I sprint a lot, so I got 13% here and 15% on the break free. 23 for a 10% bonus for shields. We're not like shield stacking, so you don't want to go too heavily into this. What's more important is having decent reduction here. 12% on both physical and elemental damage, plus 12% less dots. Here's the Big Daddy. You want to push 20% into Ironclad to reduce burst damage taken. And we have one extra jump point. We'll just throw it down here into the crit resists. Let me demonstrate this build's burst potential. You see a target that you want a guaranteed kill on? Here's how you do it. First, make sure they're not a perma blocker and make sure that they aren't on CC immunity cooldown. You fully buff, put your Ellie Drain on them. Bird of Prey, you want Swarm, Shocks, Meteor, Light Attack, Swap. The Shocks knock them down, the Meteor hits unblocked. Follow that up by immediately refreshing your Shocks and Birds. Rinse and repeat. That guy's dead. He's gone. He has just become extinct. Thanks to everyone for checking out the build. It is the most successful PvP build I've ever come up with. I'm having a blast with it, and I hope you do too. Please feel free to ask me questions below in the comments. I always try and respond as soon as I can. Also, please hit that like and subscribe button. It may seem like a small thing, but it really helps me to grow the channel and encourages me to keep creating content for you guys. Thanks for the support. I'll catch you all later and see you next time.